First of all, what is an organisation administrator, or, as it's often referred to, an org admin? Well, as the org admin, you're responsible for managing Aconex settings for your organisation. In simple terms, it's a role or function assigned to specific users. You have control over specific back-end or admin functions and options that control how the organisation is set up and configured. The best person for this role is someone that has good technical ability and time. It's also a big bonus if that person understands their organisation and its staff. Whoever registers your organisation in Aconex becomes the org admin by default, but that person isn't always the right fit. We recommend that there are at least 2 org admins just in case one isn't around. Any org admin can make someone else in their org an admin. In another video, we'll look at what the org admin does in more detail. The organisation administrator or org admin role is an important one. We'll start with an overview. In order to manage or administer user accounts, you'll need to be an organisation administrator. Here's what an org admin can do. First are the users. If you're an org admin, you can only manage people who are part of your organisation and not other organisations. In Aconex, a user is someone who has an account with a username and password and that can log in and access projects. Next are the details for the organisation itself, and this includes setting some defaults and basic information about your company. You probably won't be doing a lot of admin in this area, but it's still good to know. Lastly, there are preferences that relate to your organisation. There are a lot of them, but we'll focus on the ones that matter and that help you maintain more control and reduce risk. There will be some overlap in these 3 areas, but if you just remember that the org admin looks after users, details and preferences, that's a really good place to start. We discuss communication in the user admin course as well, but it's always worth reminding ourselves about the importance of communication in relation to administration. As an administrator, you'll be making changes to the way in which Aconex behaves and how users interact with it. These changes might be big or small, which is often very subjective. But never underestimate any kind of change. Even what appears to be a simple alteration to a setting in the preferences area could have a big impact. It's really important that you communicate early and often about any changes you make to the setup of your organisation, a project, and your colleagues' accounts. While it's nice to get a surprise every now and then, if it affects how others work, that might not be so welcome. Let's look at 3 factors that make communication successful. First, there's consistency. It really does pay to be consistent with your communications. This means using the same mechanism and format each time, and preferably those that give you the greatest chance of your communication being read or heard. If people know that important communications are always in the same place, it means less effort on their part. Next, make your communications concise. If something takes more than about 60 seconds to read, it's likely to remain unread. Sad but true. It's fair to say that most of us have to deal with lots of information coming at us from lots of different places. It's easy to miss things, and if we see something that we think will take up too much of our time, we're likely to ignore it. Finally, be clear, and that means keeping the language simple. Don't use fancy words, phrases or technical jargon if you can avoid it. For example, if your communications are in English but a lot of your audience don't speak English as their first language, using certain phrases and words can be confusing. Most of all, be direct and tell people what they need to know and what they need to do. If you need people to do something, make that the first thing in your communication. Remember the 3 C's: consistent, concise, and clear communications. In this video, we'll show you how to edit and manage your organization's details And then we'll take a look at using divisions to help manage your users. Here we are already logged into Aconex. First, we'll open up the details for the organisation via the Setup menu. Essentially, most of this information is contact information, but it's important to keep this information up to date because some of it can be seen by other organisations using Aconex via the global directory. At the top of the screen, we see the name of the organisation. If your company is part of a group of companies, you can enter both the organisation name and its trading name, which is often different. It's the trading name that is seen by other organisations using Aconex. That can be really important if a project is looking to invite your organisation to its project. If there are a lot of similar names in the global directory, it can be really difficult to decide which is the correct organisation to invite. Another important field is the organisation abbreviation, often referred to as the organisation code. This gets assigned when the organisation is first registered. However, it can be amended here. Just be mindful that any changes to the code impact the mail and document auto-numbering. Any changes to the code, especially when it has been in place for a while, need to be carefully considered. The next section stores the addresses. As with the organisation names, these can be used to help identify your organisation correctly. As with the previous details, your task as the org admin is to make sure these are up to date. Then we have phone and email details, and we'd recommend these contain main contact details like the main switchboard telephone number or a general email contact. You can also include your company's website address too. The next section allows you to choose the role for your organisation, and this doesn't actually have any effect on the functionality within Aconex. It's used primarily for marketing purposes. And lastly, we have divisions. These are really useful if you have lots of users, offices and departments. Divisions provide an easy way to manage and group staff together in a logical and sensible way. You can easily add divisions and then assign users to them, and you can retire divisions by making them inactive. Having divisions in place can be very handy for user management. If you're an org admin, you'll be looking after your organisation's preferences. The preferences have a hierarchy, so let's take a look at that now. Essentially, preferences start at the top level and flow down. Not all preferences flow down because they might only relate to a specific level. It's likely that you'll never need to change too many preferences, but it's good to understand the hierarchy. At the top, we have the Aconex preferences that are controlled by, you've guessed it, Aconex. These are not accessible by anyone else, and they control a lot of the default preferences and suit most organisations and most projects. Next, we have organisation preferences. The defaults at this level filter down from the Aconex preferences, but you can change and override certain ones. You can also lock certain preferences at this level to prevent changes at the project and user levels below. Then we have project level preferences. Again, the defaults at this level filter down from the levels above, but you can change and override certain ones. And as with the org preferences, you can lock certain ones to prevent changes at the user level below. Finally, we have the user level preferences. Anyone who has an Aconex account can change certain preferences that relate to just themselves, and we cover those in more detail in another video. As we've said before, you probably won't be changing the preferences a lot, but it's good to know how the hierarchy works and how each level can affect the one below. As the org admin, you can set various preferences for your team. Let's take a look. To manage preferences, we select the option via Setup. There are different tabs displayed at the top of the page. The tabs that you'll see will depend on your role. Here we'll just take a look at the user-related preferences. If you're on the User tab, you'll only alter your own personal preferences, so we'll move to the Organisation tab. There are a lot of options on this page, so let's concentrate on the ones that are likely to be the most useful. First, we'll quickly explain the default setting checkbox. This box tells us if the default is being used. The defaults are set by Aconex, and in most circumstances they suit most organisations. In order to change the options that have a default setting, you'll need to remove the tick. Let's get back to the options. Security is a great place to start. In another video, we discussed creating and managing users and controlling password preferences for individual users. Here's where we set it for everyone in our organisation. First is the password strength. The default or standard option is pretty strong, but there's a complex one too that requires more specific criteria to be used. Then there's the setting that controls how long passwords last before they expire and need to be reset. As before, you can decide to enforce a different setting. Once you've made any changes, just remember to click the Save button so they take effect. One thing to note is that the password access or expiry rule always has the same incorrect password attempts set to 5. And this means that after 5 unsuccessful attempts at logging in, the system will automatically lock that user account. Remember that as an org admin, you can unlock the account, and we explain how that's done in our user admin course. We've discussed the importance of communication in other lessons. Well, changing the security settings are a prime example. If you were to just change these settings without telling anyone, there could be a great deal of frustration on the part of the user when their password next expires. It's better to communicate changes like this in advance so that people know what to expect and what they need to do. Remember the 3 C's: consistent, concise, and clear communications. That's it for organisation-based preferences. They're pretty easy to understand and change. Just remember that some changes may have an adverse effect on your users. The subject of change is a big one. We can't cover it all here, but we can take a look at one methodology that is both simple to understand and very practical. The methodology is from an organisation called ProSci. It's very popular and recognised globally. You can even get a qualification. It's very comprehensive, so we'll introduce just a part of the methodology. ADKAR. In simple terms, it's a process you can use to help you manage and drive change. As an Aconex administrator, it'll help you manage change for your project and team. Let's break down the 5 steps. An awareness of the need for change, a desire to support the change, knowledge of how to change, the ability to demonstrate skills and behaviours, and reinforcement to make the change stick. It's otherwise known as ADKAR. Let's look at each of these steps one by one. Our first step in managing change is to create awareness of the need for that change. A person must understand the nature of the change, why it's needed, and the risks of not changing. We also need to explain what it means to the individual, what's in it for me or with them. When a change occurs, people often ask, why is this change necessary? Why is it happening now? What's wrong with what we're currently doing? What happens if we don't change? Be prepared to have answers to these questions. Lack of awareness is the number one reason for resistance to change. The key is to let people know in advance about the change. Our second step in managing change is to create the desire to be part of the change. This is about motivation and choice. It forms a strong partnership with awareness, but unlike awareness, creating desire poses a real challenge because it's not within our direct control. But even if we cannot dictate the decisions of our colleagues, we can influence them. It's a mistake to think that if we have good awareness, desire will automatically follow. It won't. But if you get awareness and desire right, there's a much higher chance of the change being successful. The third step in managing change represents how to implement the change. This includes training and education on the required skills and behaviours, more detailed information on how to use the new processes, systems or tools, and understanding any of the new roles and responsibilities. Depending on the change, this step could be a relatively simple part of the overall process or a more complex transformational one. Organisations often jump straight to this part of the process with little consideration for awareness and desire. That's a big mistake. The fourth step in managing change represents the demonstrated capability to implement the change and to achieve the desired performance level, otherwise known as ability. To be clear, knowledge on its own is not enough. Plus, we need measurable results to confirm the ability, and sometimes we need to understand and acknowledge that not everyone will be capable of making the change. Managers often believe that change equals training. It doesn't. And there are two pitfalls with this approach. Training is ineffective if awareness and desire are lacking. Training doesn't always lead to ability. The presence of knowledge, for example via training, is often insufficient. Ability is the act of doing and must be measured in some way. Knowing how to do something is not the same as being able to do it. The final step in managing change includes any action that strengthens and reinforces a change. The aim is to prevent old habits and behaviours creeping back into the workplace. Reinforcement includes any action or event that strengthens and reinforces a change with an individual or organisation. It doesn't always require a major event. Often a simple thank you from a manager is just as powerful. Reinforcement is often missing in a lot of organisations, and this increases the risk of a change losing its momentum. Here's a quick summary for when you need to communicate change with your teams. First, focus on the impact of the change for them. What are the benefits? Also, be clear about what you know and don't know. And most importantly, don't bluff or lie. Let them know when more information will become available. Nobody likes to be kept guessing. Be clear about how they can provide feedback. This allows them to get involved and be part of the change. This was a really quick introduction to ProSize ADCAR model, but they have some great resources on their site and it's well worth checking out. Let's finish this course with a recap of what we've covered and what's next. But first of all, congratulations. If you've finished all the lessons and topics in this course, well done. We know it's difficult sometimes to set aside the time for learning new things. Here's what we've covered. There were 3 lessons. The first looked at the role of the Organisation Administrator or OrgAdmin and what it controls along with the importance of communication. Then we dug a little deeper into how we manage our organisation, including the various preferences. In the third lesson, we discussed change and introduced a popular methodology to help manage change. So, what's next? Well, you've completed course 1. You then have 3 more courses to complete if you want to finish the specialist level learning. Next up, we have courses that look at project and user admin, and then the final course covers workflow admin. Good luck and happy learning.